Hey guys, it's Maltha here once again, and I wanted to give you the follow-up video for the Ethereal Knives Trickster using the Eternity Shroud chest, which basically just gives you a bunch of extra chaos damage based off of your elemental damage. Now it is a pretty broken chest if you scale it correctly, which means going from one conversion into another, for example, lightning into cold, into fire, then you're getting triple benefit from the elemental to chaos, but my build here doesn't really do that. It's basically just some fizz converted to lightning and cold, and you're getting, at the end of the day, about 50% extra elemental as chaos onto the Ethereal Knives. The playstyle has felt incredible for Ethereal Knives once you get the right amount of damage, projectile speed, cast speed, all of which Trickster has easy access to. Then Ethereal Knives starts to clear like kind of a monster. As you can see here, a lot of the time I now use Spell Echo in the end game, because originally I did use Unleash. And Unleash feels really good on maps where you can afford to use Unleash, which is basically things that can get pretty comfortably one-shot, or things that you don't really struggle on for bosses and rare monsters. Once the bosses and the rare monsters take a few seconds to kill, you're much better off using Spell Echo, and at that point it feels pretty good to just have that bonus amount of DPS. On this case though, I am, for the most part, in the tier 14 plus category using only Spell Echo, and I'm still running Chain as well. After my sort of testing with Chain, Pierce, Fork, I seem to think that Chain is going to be the best for your clear speed and the nicest overall playstyle, but you do of course replace Chain with Slow Approach or Pierce once you get into the boss fight category, but for the most part in clear, once you have the good damage and attack speed and all of that, or cast speed, sorry, then Chain feels the best, I think. But I do encourage you, if you're going to play Ethereal Knives, to try it out yourself and see what you like most. Maybe you prefer Pierce, maybe you prefer Fork, but it is pretty important to get lots of projectile speed, so I do have two wands that do that. That's probably about the amount you need, around about 100 extra proj speed, and that's when Ethereal Knives really starts to take off in its clear. But for the record, I don't think you actually need that much proj speed. The amount that is on the gem itself by default, maybe even a little bit more from an amulet and your passive tree, is going to be enough for you to play Ethereal Knives and actually enjoy it. So if you really would rather just use a dual scepter setup, a staff setup, something with a shield for shield charge, I think you can easily get by and you don't have to use these types of wands, because as you'll see at the end of the video, my wands are pretty crappy still, and even with this sort of stuff you can get by on pretty comfortable DPS. So the goal with Ethereal Knives ever since it got buffed was to make a character that can clear well, which shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Ethereal Knives clears very well, but it was also to see if we can keep up the single target without having to resort to our traditional Blade Vortex secondary setup. And in this case, I ended up resorting to also using Flame Totem, which you can currently get to pretty high DPS levels. Mine, all three of them up, if you have all three up, does about 1 million damage against the Shaper targets. I've also got Stormbrand, which attaches to enemies for a little bit of damage, but it keeps up Arcane Surge and also keeps up Onslaught against the bosses and enemies. And then I'm also using Winter Orb, but that is primarily there to make use of the Trickster setup that gives you frenzies and power charges as you channel. If I didn't have that Trickster node, I'm not so sure I'd even have Winter Orb, but you certainly could, because it's a little bit of extra damage too. So I channel that up before I start a boss fight to try and get my frenzies and power charges going, and then since it's got some duration on it, it can do a bit of extra damage for a bit of extra time as well. But it's mostly the Flame Totem and the Ethereal Knives doing big work against the single target, because with Slow Approach, I do happen to have something like 1.6 million Shaper DPS, and you'll see that my gear is absolutely nothing special except for the chest itself, and the chest I don't think is strictly necessary in this type of build. It's just something you can additionally build around, but because I chose to build around it, most of my gear is pretty shit because it all has to be shaped gear. So single target did end up performing rather well, did kill all the Guardians, did almost hit level 95 and do most of this stuff deathless, and I'll give you the Uber Elder video, my first one for the league, right after I go over the gear right now. So just before I go over the character at its final stage, I will show you the hair, because obviously I got a little bit of a trim, as you can see. So there it is. just slightly bigger even. There's a haircut. Had long hair for like 2 years. Thought it was time for a change. It's just a much more comfortable lifestyle having shorter hair, and it regrows pretty quickly. I think by the time the year ends, I'll have fairly long hair again in any case. So there it is. Enjoy. And back into the character. So we are still on the level 94.5 Trickster called Wide EK Happy. Got to this level pretty damn quickly, I think, and could easily push for 95, as I have been slowly doing during my end game, but we'll probably leave it before it does hit 95. At this stage, the gear hasn't really changed since the last video, except for wands. I do have 2 different new wands, and they have projectile speed and then whatever else. Basically, you're going for projectile speed and an Elia's Chaos roll. Ideally, I managed to craft both of these by using Screaming Essence of Dread, which cost 1 Chaos, I think, to put projectile speed on, and then hopefully you'll get something else. Maybe some cast speed, some damage, some fizzes, lightning, some Elia's Chaos, some crit multi. There's lots of stuff you can get, and basically you're just going for Essence of Dread spam until you can get something or anything. Otherwise, you can just buy some stuff. They're really not too expensive, projectile speed wands. Otherwise, you don't even need that much projectile speed, as I mentioned. It is nice to have this additional from the wands. That's even with slower proj there. But you can get by with plenty of other things that don't require proj speed, and in turn give you much, much better DPS. Because 2 really good shaped scepters will probably just about double my damage, but it would be a lot more expensive to do so. You could probably build into dual void batteries, some shimmer on stuff, all kinds of different weapon setups. But if you're going the chest like I did, which in my setup is debatably worth it, because like I said, I don't abuse that Elia's Chaos too much. You really want to go from like lightning into cold into fire to get the triple dipping there, whereas we're only, for the most part, getting like 1 round of dips. So you can see my damage here. Probably half of it is chaos at this point, so we do have lots of cold, still fair chunk of fizz, fire, lots of lightning, and then about the rest, roughly half, is chaos. And that's because of this chest and also these wands. So in total, it's probably about half of our damage is chaos. If you don't want to use this chest, if it's too expensive, you could quite comfortably build around something like a Shroud of the Lightless. Plenty of other chests. A good Shaper chest that has +1 gems or spell crit would be totally fine too. And then you can really be a lot more flexible with all of your gear, because the only other really impressive thing is my Fizzes Extra Cold, Fizzes Extra Lightning amulet, which has nothing else on it, so it's kind of crap, but we could craft a bit of proj speed there. The rest of the gear, just an Assassin Mark ring, roll that however you can. Not even that strictly necessary to get an Assassin Mark ring, especially as a Trickster, but there it is. And then I just bought some shaped stuff that I could, as I could. Tried to convert a bit of extra fizz into cold with a craft. That doesn't really deal that much extra damage, but it is worth doing if you got a spare prefix. And yeah, the rest, as you can tell, not too impressive at all. The final links were Ethereal Knives into Crit Strikes, which is probably a bit of a weak link at my stage of crit, but still using it. Spell Echo, Energy Leech, Fizz to Lightning, and Slower Proj. Now that is a pure single target setup. When I'm running maps, I will be using Chain instead of Slower Proj, and like I said, quite often Unleash instead of Echo does feel quite nice too when you can unleash 4 of your EKs all at once every couple of packs. But besides that, once you get good enough attack speed, or cast speed, sorry, Spell Echo doesn't feel like it's locking you down too much. Now, importantly, before just about every single pack, I am Stormbranding. With my level of cast speed, it feels pretty comfortable to do so. So Stormbrand triggers your Arcane Surge. As well as that, it gives you power charges on single target, and it also triggers Onslaught. So it's a very powerful utility to Stormbrand enemies before you go into the packs. And it also actually does quite a bit of damage. My Stormbrand could probably clear most trash packs all by itself. So I do recommend getting one of those if you want to save on a flask slot for Onslaught and to get Arcane Surge going. You then have your Holy Flame Totem, which, like I said, at this point, if I have all 3 of them up, deals about 1,000,000 damage, and with this proj speed, it can clear everything for you as well. So Flame Totem, Multi-Totem, Infused Channeling, and Elemental Focus. Now bear in mind, infused channeling does deal that more damage, but it won't ever infuse the totem. So it says totems cannot gain infusion, but they are still supported by infused channeling's base damage. So that's why we have that. You then have your Winter Orb, which, like I said, I basically use so that I can charge up my Trickster charges before going into a fight. Sometimes I will keep it up during other fights as well, because it's pretty quick and easy to get to 10 stacks. And then we have greater multiple projectiles, duration, and cold to fire attached to that for maximum deeps. And then I have Herald of Ash and Hatred as my 2 auras, and Stone Golem and Flame Dash just as my method of travel. Now, Flame Dash is extremely useful at this 2020 sort of stage, level 20, 20 qual, and if you have these nodes over here, it is up quite often, and it does give you a lot of extra damage because of that node, and also because of Weave the Arcane. And Weave the Arcane, as I mentioned in the previous video, is basically there so you can keep our mana up, because it is a little bit tricky managing mana. At this level, at 94, I have my mana managed completely, because I did take this extra little node over here. I get some mana regen on the tree, and then with Arcane Surge, I should be able to spam fairly freely, as long as Weave the Arcane triggers every now and again, and I currently got pretty unlucky there. There we go. So it should manage your mana. That is largely because of Weave the Arcane though. Without that, you will have to actually do a few extra mana regen things. So keep in mind that may be a little bit challenging. Not sure what else to say about the rest. I think it's pretty much it. I'm not running a life flask because very rarely will I dip into my life pool for damage taken, and then I leech life through Ethereal's Promise. But by all means, you can run a life flask if you're going to do a hybrid Trickster like this. And overall, I'm not too sure hybrid was worth it in this setup, because my chest isn't that good for the hybrid stuff. I didn't end up getting that much energy shield or that much use out of the ghost shrouds, because I just don't have that much evasion. You can see the evasion here is about 6.4, so when I get hit back, I get not too much energy shield back, like 1,000 or some shit, barely even that. So it's kind of weak in that context, but it did kind of work as a hybrid setup. If you're going to do this, you definitely need some chaos resist, so mine is currently minus 25, and then with the flask up, it's 19, and that does make some of the chaos out there a bit more manageable. Now, besides that, you can level as Ethereal Knives, but just about anything else will probably be better, like a Divine Ire. So you can set up just Divine Ire in this build 1-for-1, and it'll probably be a lot better, but I just then played Divine Ire, so I wasn't going to do that again. There's plenty of physical spells you can use in this: Blade Vortex, Blade Fall, Wave of Conviction, Purifying Flame. You can try all those, but this is just a nice little template for a hybrid Fizz to whatever Trickster, and then it can clear the game, and it's just a nice example of EK working, because Ethereal Knives definitely can work now, especially with the buffs and with your assisted single targets. It can actually clear things, as you can see in this Uber Elder run. So thank you very much for watching this character, guys. Enjoy the Uber Elder run, and see you next time. Skipped it last year. Yeah, I haven't had a short haircut in like a couple years now. I just had trims and stuff. Ah, fuck! Really? I didn't get a chance to charge up. I didn't think I was in range. So spending way too much time trying to charge up my shit. And it just, yeah, locked me in too long. So I gotta actually play the game instead. Man, I can't even like just keep throwing fucking sets at it either. Because I've only got 2 total. Thanks for Rosmundo for the 25 months. I mean, if you're gonna die, dying at the very start's a good time to do it. Because you can recover better. Yeah, like placing totems right now for me is really slow. Yeah, I shouldn't even bother charging up Winter Orb. It's mostly there to get frenzies before a fight. It's not going to help me otherwise. So I need to make sure I avoid doing that. Stormbrand I can still do, that's fine. Okay, that's good. Stormbrand fucking solos the trash, dude. That's actually really convenient. Deeps is definitely there. Playstyle's there as well. I just needed to not be a fucking potato to start with. And that was my flaw. I went for the potato play. Ah, slaps. Whoa! That portal just shoved me out of the way of where I was standing. That was fucking rude, dude. I've never had that happen before. I guess it's pretty rare to stand in the exact spot where a portal spawns, because I've never done that. Deathless? Right? That was deathless. Last I checked, I never died. I feel like I just leveled full XP bar. Oh man, did I get Omega fucked? No good loot at all. And then a steel ring, which is like horribly out of flavor, I think.